is up, y'all? Kylo here. Let me give you the rundown on what's the current situation here. I'm off work early-ish. It's like 4:15, January the 3rd. Yesterday I worked by myself. Well, by myself. I was the only pharmacist on duty for the majority of the day. Everyone was sick, out. We had employees dropping like flies from different various reasons, and I took the brunt of it. January the 2nd in a retail drugstore, well, let me just tell you, it's ugly, like prison rape ugly. I just dealt with it. I gritted my teeth and just pushed right on through, and I survived. And then I went back today and I got some more, and then I actually had help today, and I said, you know, we're just about caught up. The sun is shining. The cumies are banging off. I've got like an hour of daylight left. There's wind blowing. Go flying, y'all. Wrong. And I want to talk to you today about, well, I'll just tell you when we get in the air. How about that? So, this is kind of what I was afraid of. There was like a slight chance of some development happening, and you know, it developed a bit, but there's a gust front blowing through right now. It's not strong, it's not scary, but in all honesty, it's not something that I really feel like dealing with right now. Like marginal conditions, I feel a little bit of moisture in the air. You know, my glasses were getting speckled with like the lightest mist. I've got the glider laying out here in the yard, and I'm just watching the windsock and it's bouncing around like crazy. I can hear the wind flipping around on the trees, and it's just sharp. It's gusty and it may pass. This may pass, and I may still be good for the evening, but for now I'm just gonna watch it. Bigger raindrops are hitting me now. I may actually go get the glider. That'll make it stop. You know, if I put everything up, it'll quit and it'll be pretty. That's how this works. For now, there's like the weather's dropping. All this stuff back behind me here is dumping whatever it lifted up earlier when the sun was poking out. So it swole up, got big and dark, and now it's coming down. And even though it's not like thunderstorm, big system type weather, it is weather, and it is enough that I may not want to mess with it. Of course, right when I start the video, here comes Ian. I was gonna fly, but then a gust front came through and it started raining. I don't guess I'm flying now. I'm sitting here petting the dogs instead. Gonna shoot a little vlog about it. And somebody asked a question today, really gonna make a good video or a good talk to do during a video. And he said in the comment that, well, heck, why don't I just read it? It was Mr. Ryan Kephart asked, thanks, Kylo. This was a good informative video that will surely help many getting into this sport. Your efforts for this content are appreciated. I did have one question for you. I had a buddy I flew with all the time, but now he has moved. I haven't flown since. Should I fly alone? What are some of the things to do if flying alone? And do you have any suggestions? Flying alone is something that I may be an expert in. That and a couple of other things. Door! Well, that was a close shot. I guess they mining in the neighborhood. But yeah, flying alone is something that I've done a lot of over the years. Even from the very beginning, when I initially took my first paramotor instruction, my initial instruction, I think I had 8 flights over the course of a weekend. And at that point, the instructor said, you're ready to go out on your own and practice. I took his advice, and like the very next day, I was out on my own doing practice. And I flew every chance I could for years. I went out and I flew alone a lot. I did a couple of exhibitions in front of people, maybe around flight number 18. Of course, a kickstrap went through the prop and I crashed in front of the first people I ever flew in front of. It wasn't really a crash. I did everything like executed perfectly. I may do a story time about that sometime. For now, I just wanted to talk about flying alone, and that's probably where I've learned more than any instruction that I've had. The instruction is great. It really pushes you into kind of that next level quickly. No matter what it is you're learning, it just shortens the time tremendously. Like you can learn it in a short time, then you can take that and go practice it for a long time, and that's kind of what I did. As far as the things to do, like you could be wise about flying alone or you could be unwise about flying alone. There have been situations where people have gone out alone and not told anybody where they were going, what they were doing. They end up in trouble, and then it's days before anybody even comes looking for them if something goes down. That could be a matter of life and death. Some wise moves to make would be tell someone where you're going. Having a good communication set up with a wife who is very communicative would be helpful, where like you text her or call her before you take off, and then you do the same thing when you land. And if you're consistent about that, again, maybe where you are, where you're going. Man, there's a lot of gunfire in the neighborhood tonight. Probably should go in the studio. Wind's blowing, it's raining. I don't think I'll get the fly tonight. Does seem like it's calming down slightly. Sorry, distracted by the weather and the gunfire. Communication. Communication could be a matter of life and death. Something to consider if you're going to be flying alone. Decisions you make, risk you take. I do a lot of alone flying. The majority of my flying is alone. Rarely do I communicate with anybody. It doesn't really do. My wife doesn't check. It's just the way it is. She's not good at the phone, I guess. I do tell people whenever somebody's around, I tell them what I'm doing. I tell them where I'm going. Obviously, if I don't come back in any reasonable time, it may be time to start calling and looking. But it's highly individualized as to the risk you take. And flying alone and not communicating with anyone is very risky. It could be the next time you have to show up somewhere before anybody even begins to start looking for you, if that's the situation. Don't be like me, but listen to what I say. Just because I don't make good decisions every time that I do something doesn't mean I shouldn't, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't either. And you have to think about that. You have to think about the choices, the risk. It has to be a calculation in your mind, and it's a very personal thing, how much risk you want to bite off, chew, and swallow. Nobody can tell you what's right except for you. That's something to ponder on and do some real soul searching about before you make those kind of decisions and do that kind of flying. Paramotoring around in buttery air, there's a very, very low risk of anything bad going down. But you put yourself in mountainous terrain and near water, moving water, rocks, trees, stuff that could really get you hemmed up. Something I did learn on my second day is have some way to communicate. A telephone, something that I've got recently this year is a subscription to a Garmin inReach, and that's because a lot of the flying I do is alone. And if I'm in a situation where I feel like I need to carry a reserve, I will generally carry that Garmin inReach because it has the capability of texting through satellite connections. I've got my cell phone as well, and sometimes a radio. If I'm flying with students, I usually have a radio with me or near me. And if I'm free flying, I always have a radio with me so that I can communicate. Damn it, the gunfire. Just having a way to communicate could be life and death. And again, with the Garmin inReach, it also has a GPS. So I've got pre-programmed help messages in there. All I got to do is select whatever message it is that I want to send. And with it, it sends my GPS location, where I'm actually texting from. That's a very neat thing. You don't have to tell them where you're at. It shows exactly where you're at, down to the foot. So if somebody needs to come help, they know right where to go. And that is pretty useful, and that's a pretty neat tool to have. I keep it stuck on my flying gear, on my flight deck. It's just good. It's a good option. A telephone at the minimum. The only time you'll ever see me flying without communication is if I'm got people around and I'm staying at the field. Now that is one situation where you may not have to communicate with anybody. If you go down and take some sort of nastiness, there are people there that can help, that have a way to communicate. Hopefully, the people that I hang out with all do. But that is something that is important. And that's probably the biggest thing about flying alone. Now, there's also like a personal thing. Like a lot of people have this thing where they need somebody around before they can do anything. My wife is like that. I asked her, the other day about, she said something about, alone on a beach. And I said, have you ever been alone anywhere? And she got to thinking and she said, well, no, I usually have somebody around, outside of being alone at home or something. A lot of people, it seems, are like that. I'm kind of the anomaly. I'm sort of an outlier when it comes to that because I do a lot of things alone. I crave the alone time, actually. It's very nice for me just to have some solitude and do some self-reflection. Or in this case, some vlogging. I mean, vlogging has become kind of part of what I do when I have alone time. Even previous to that, I enjoyed studying, doing stuff in the shop, just a little solitude, I can do some real soul searching whenever I'm alone doing something such as flying or building things or designing or just whatever it is. Just having that peace and not having things going on around me is very refreshing. That is nice, but it's not something for everybody, it seems. Flying alone, again, I sort of embraced it right from the get-go, and that's something that I've done all along. I've probably got more flight time in alone than I ever have with other pilots or with groups of pilots. And Ryan had a buddy who moved away, and now he's like, should I fly alone? Well, the answer is yes. You most certainly should fly alone. But keep it safe. Keep some sort of line of communication available. And that's the biggest thing to take away from that. Don't make any bad decisions. Don't put yourself in any risky spots. And you make good flying decisions. Flying alone is not such a bad thing. Even in big air, it's not such a bad thing. Again, it's really a highly personalized thing. I can't answer that question for anyone else. I can only talk about what I do and how I do it. That would be my biggest takeaway. Don't make risky decisions. Not that you should make them if there's other people around. A lot of times having people around seems to give some pilots confidence to do things that they wouldn't do alone. I don't know why that is. I do all the same stuff alone that I would do with anyone present. So I don't know if not like they could help you if something happened, if you made a bad decision, they would be there to maybe help communicate or coordinate. Having a flying buddy does make it safer. It is a positive thing. It doesn't have to be a negative thing to not have a flying buddy around. Those are just my thoughts. And if I were in your situation, I would go out and I would pick a big spot like how you would pick if you were flying your first flight. Big field, no obstructions, good conditions, and just make some flights on your own. Turn on some music, spend some time with yourself and the equipment, and go do some practice. Often you can attain more out of an alone practice session than you can being around others. You're distracted. You're watching for other pilots. You're checking out the moves they're making. Maybe you're looking at their gear, their setup. You're having conversations. You could mess up a pre-flight because you're having a conversation with someone. I've done it. I've seen it happen. I've read about it happening. These are things you got to consider with any sort of aviation. Classic. I got interrupted after I pulled the plane out and I didn't go through all my normal methodical motions. So something to be said for could be a negative having people around as well. A lot of times when I'm doing a pre-flight, I'll go ahead and put the earbuds in, turn the music on, put the buds in, the cups on. Whoever's around, I'm like, I can't hear anything you're saying. I'm gonna do my pre-flight. Maybe they say something, I don't know. But I just let them know I can't hear. And not being able to hear is kind of puts you back alone so that you can focus on what you need to be doing. But once you're flying, having somebody up there, it's always a treat. It's always fun. But it could be fun either way, I guess is my point. Do what's best for you, but in no way would I ever give up flying because my flying buddy moved away. I would continue to fly, and I have. Something that you should ask yourself and do for yourself, and that goes for any of you guys. Should I fly? I will make another video about that flight, and I will do something else as far as the topic. I think I've covered pretty much everything that I can think of right now in the moment about flying alone. Do it, and do it wisely is my advice. So I'm gonna cut it off here. Just watch the weather move for a bit. What's up, everybody? Kyle out.